We'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and say hello. Welcome, everyone, to our winter association meeting and panel discussion, Elevating Voices, Developing Parent and Caregiver Leadership at PUSD. I'm Scott Hardin, PTA President of PTA Council. I'm super proud of everyone that we've been able to assemble tonight. I'm not going to say much. I'm going to get out of the way because we have some wonderful people to speak tonight. First off, I want to thank Jennifer Miyake-Trapp for being with us tonight. She is going to kick us off and say a few words. And then we're going to be, in case I hope I'm not stealing anyone's thunder, but I'm just going to briefly introduce the folks, our panelists tonight. Marcus Hatcher from Willard, Gargi Matuszewski from sorry, I think I massacred that, from San Rafael. Nita Bailey from the African American Parent Council, Begonia Batista from the District English Learner Advisory Committee, otherwise known as DLAC. Maria Gonzalez from the CIS School Site Council, Dr. David Rennie from the District Advisory Council, Warren Skidmore from the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education, and Lily Bartenstein and Theresa Reed from the Foster Youth Council, and last but certainly not least, Natasha Mahone from the LCAP Parent Advisory Committee. There's a lot of folks, a lot to get to tonight. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Jennifer. Jennifer, take it away. Thank you.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. I am so delighted to see new faces. Those of you that I recognize, Nia, your smile is always just everything. Like no matter what, when somebody starts talking, you smile and welcome them, and it like radiates throughout every place. And so whenever I run into you on Zoom, I'm always just delighted. Even though I don't know that I met you in real life, but I am so grateful. So good evening, everyone. I know people have had a busy day, wrangling children and getting through carpools and all sorts of job and life. Susan and Scott just invited me here to share a few words, but I realized I should introduce who I am for those of you who don't know me. My name is Jenny. I'm a mom here in PUSD. I've got one at Jackson and I've got one at Washington STEAM Multilingual Academy. I think I said that right. And then my husband, okay, David Rennie's giving me the thumbs up. And then my husband is a teacher. He taught at Elliott and now he teaches at Washington as well. So just delighted to be here with all of you. I knew it was going to be a long day. And I know for many of us, the arts have helped us get through these past couple years, through the calls for racial justice, through the pandemic, through the struggles that our community has gone through in many different ways. So I was trying to give me liberties to connect with your Hamilton roots here. So those of you who are Hamilton fans, and we'll see if it'll let me share screen. Perfect. All right. Can you all see my screen? Awesome. Thumbs up. Appreciate that. Yep. So I'll just go quickly. I'm supposed to give now 4 minutes of, I don't know, a pump up. Let's do this for PUSD and our students and our kids. So I thought I'd, connect it to elevating voices. So let's figure out whose voices we're really elevating. And whose voices we want to elevate. So history has its eyes on us for sure, as we think about, our roles as parent leaders. So the room where it happens, and hopefully in your mind now you have sorry, let me get my floating meeting controls away. So I want to see all of you again. There we go. Perfect. Y'all have this song going on in your head, I hope, because who doesn't want the song? And now I've got somebody's doing whiteboard. I don't know what's going on.
Somebody's drawing ideas already.
Somebody's drawing. Okay. In the room where it happens, the ideas come. So, as we think about parent leaders, we have so many fabulous parent leaders in this room tonight. And so our challenge is that, how do we get our community members, our children, our families, our neighbors into the room where it happens? That's the first question. But then the real question is that outdated? Is this idea that people need to come to us or come to our meeting at our time, something that we might want to reconceptualize? because, those notions are based on, a lot of history of privilege and power and who has access and who doesn't. So just, dropping that little thing that maybe it's not, there's one room where it happens, but maybe there's got to be a lot of rooms where it happens. And maybe we need to create different spaces and bring the rooms to people who can't come during times that are traditionally or historically convenient for the school day. And then the other question that I challenge everyone with is, how do I get in their rooms, right? Is it always about the impetus on the others, those that don't come, that don't participate, to have to show up to my room? Or is it really on me? Do I need to work harder? Do I need to get some more allies? Do I need to talk to different community members from different spaces to get into their rooms and see, what it's like to be in their space? And I don't necessarily mean that physically, but certainly we all walk in different ways. And so how do we get into each other's lived experiences? So just kind of wanted to kind of challenge that notion, as this is obviously a powerhouse room of people here dedicated to making change. So how do we broaden that tent? How do we get more rooms and more people into those different spaces in a way that they feel welcomed and safe? So that's notion number one here. And then the second one, well, this is more of a joke because here I am talking at you this evening. But so the idea of like talk less, smile more. But if this is the caveat, but if you're gonna talk, language matters. And it matters more than we'd like to think. So there's a few ways in which language matters. And if you're not going to take them seriously, then please talk less. But if you are going to take them seriously, I'm going to give a couple nuggets on different ways that language matter. And this is all research based on best practices in community engagement and parental and family engagement in schools, particularly schools of color. So first off, which we already have going on here, is to respect home languages and make sure that it's just the default, it's the norm. That language interpretation is always there, and it's not a last minute call in and get into the space. One case study that I read that really brought a school community together, and I can't remember where it was, but they flipped it. They actually said this meeting is going to be conducted in Spanish with English translation, even though it was a majority English speaking school. And that was really a powerful message to the members of the community, and also forced the English dominant families, but it forced the English dominant families to look from a different lens. That there are structural barriers, there's linguistic barriers, there are different things that prevent people that are often hidden when you're part of that, you have the social capital and you have those things. They may be hidden or blind to you. And so I just thought that was like such a powerful message. How do we center those that are on the margins? And maybe it's not always, but certainly can be intentionally done to make us all realize that, those are the lenses we don't see. Those are the experiences that we need to include if we're really going to say we are PUSD or we are this school community. A couple other pieces of that is the importance of using inclusive language. And I realize I'm preaching to the choir probably a little bit here because y'all are superstars with this, but just making sure that our language is always asset-based. It's never those families, it's never those students. And honestly, to check in on asset-based language, I often just ask, hey, is it appropriate to say it's a child with this kind of disability? How does your child identify him or herself? How do they speak about themselves? How have you raised them to talk? So just like not being afraid to be not to be too politically correct, because we need to talk about real issues, but just asking, is it Black or African American? Just say it, just ask. Or if you talk around it, then there's no community being built because it's all just nice talk. So really, just really looking at our language, not making assumptions, but asking how do we reference our different community members? What would you like me to call you? I'm trying to learn here. Help me out. and just being really honest in building those relationships, or else there's no trust in the space and no intimacy. And making sure, like I said, our language is asset based. And then the last thing, studies have shown time and time again that parents, first of all, everybody loves their babies, right? Like that's something that we all know, whether they show up to PTA or not, they love their babies and are doing the very best they can to love on their babies. But like acronyms and education ease and all the jargon, I don't even know what it means half the time, and this is my job. So I think it's really important to take that moment, when your principal is sending out that message announcing school site council. As parent leaders, it's okay to say, hey, can we add an extra line about what school site council is in real terms, in real talk? Because even the formal description don't help me understand. So it's those kind of things to like not take that linguistic privilege for granted, because we're on the inside. Y'all knew how to click on Zoom. I see everybody's little acronyms, I'm LCAP and I'm whatever. But people outside of the room where it happens traditionally don't know those words, don't know those acronyms, and are going to stay away because nobody wants to feel like they're ignorant, right? And those acronyms and those terms are really, really intimidating. So I would say as parent leaders, if we can, the more we can advocate to demystify those terms and those acronyms and those formal titles, the more buy-in we're going to get. Another thing to consider with all those terms is they're not easily translatable. You can't do a word for word translation of a lot of them. So, if we can change so that we're explaining what they mean in accessible language, then that's easily translatable into other language as well. So we don't want barriers, just coming from the very jargon we're using in our attempts to be inclusive. Okay. And then let's see, I have one more slide here. I think. There we go. Whose story gets told? So of course we have the Schuyler sisters here because they're telling you, like, I'm going to tell Thomas Jefferson to include women in the sequel, right? So whose story is going to get told here? And I bring this up because it's so important to know the history of PUSD, of which I'm still learning. I'm a new resident here. I don't know the real history, the longer history before my daughters entered kindergarten. So know the history of the schools and the district and the communities beyond your school community. It's so incredibly important. And also remember as parent leaders that if we're sitting in the room where it happens, those are the only individuals whose stories are going to get told. And so if we want everybody's stories to get told and included, that we've got to either redefine the room or do more to make those rooms accessible so that everybody's story gets told. And I'll just leave one last anecdote. We were at the Washington STEAM Multilingual Academy Community Forum last night because they're discussing the possibility of renaming the school to Octavia E. Butler Middle School. And there was a community member who spoke up. I did not know him. It didn't seem like the other people on the call were familiar with him, just judging off like facial expressions and such. And he talked about him and his family had grown up in that community, and he and his friends went to Washington. And he said, how powerful would it be to have a woman like Octavia Butler who walked these halls and walked these streets, wrote and documented about that, knowing that I walked those same streets as her. She walked the same streets as me. And so that's kind of all of our challenge is, without this name change, probably fewer people would know. And that's an example of decisions made to tell whose story. So that's kind of our challenge, I feel like, as parent leaders, to advocate for whose story gets told and who gets to be in those rooms where it happened. So I'll leave you with one last quote. Legacy, what is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. And that is just the final quote, and that's, I think, why we're all here. We're not just here for now and for, what our kid is going to do this year, but sometimes the fruits of our labor come years to come after our students are long and gone out of PUSD. But we've been here and we've told stories and tried to get everybody in this room. So those are my words for you all. And I'm just grateful for all of you for being here and all the wonderful work that you do. And I'm going to stick around because now I get to just be a community member and learn. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, we're going to go ahead and kick off our panel discussion. So Susan Schwartz from Penn is with us, and she's going to moderate the discussion. Thank you, Susan, and take it away.
All right. Thank you, PTA Council, for hosting this event, and Jennifer for that awesome introduction. I'm going to take a little bit of credit because I thought, who would be a good person to kick this off? Haha, I know. So, right, Scott?
Yes, you did.
I can take credit for that. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But truly, we have a panel of amazing parent leaders who are about to introduce themselves. And when I say amazing, what I mean is that most of them did not set out to be leaders. What they did was they took an interest, not only in their own children, obviously, but in their children's teachers and classmates, in their schools. And when they wanted to know how something worked or why something didn't work, they asked questions. And they connected with other parents and caregivers, and they started attending meetings. And well, here they are this evening to share what they've learned about and what participating in PUSD means to them. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to give a brief self-introduction and also to tell us, again, briefly, a little bit about how their particular group that they're involved with makes a difference in Pasadena Unified. It makes a difference for our kids. And then we're going to go to a few other sort of more discussion questions for them. And we have 9 panelists. So we're going to try to keep each of our intros to under a couple of minutes so that we have time for more discussion after that. And I'm going to start with our 2 school PTA presidents, Marcus and then Gargi. And the questions that each person is going to answer right now in introducing themselves, they're going to give their name, their school, and what their position or the group they're involved with. And then I want you to tell me just briefly, what was your first act of parent involvement at your school, at your child's school? And then what is one tangible way that you see the group you're working with making a difference? And then we'll go through everybody, and then we'll come back around and go to some more questions. So these are introductions, and let's start with Marcus.
Good afternoon, Susan. I just want to make sure 3 questions instead of 4. Is that correct?
We're going to get to the 4th one at the end. We'll come back and wrap up with that. Yes.
Gotcha. So first of all, Jenny, I thought that was awesome, and you touched on a couple points that I think are extremely important. And side note, I took my wife to go see Hamilton on her birthday, when it opened back up in August. My name is Marcus Hatcher. I'm the unit president at Willard Elementary School. And I've started being the president this beginning of this school year, which started actually, I guess our term started in July. And I first got introduced to Willard. We came from LAUSD. And, frankly, when we opted out, we had to opt out of LAUSD, and subsequently we moved to Pasadena. And part of the problem we had in LAUSD is, frankly, the school in terms of its student population and teacher population and staff population was not representative of Los Angeles. There were exactly 0 Black teachers, 0 Black staff members. And frankly, it just did not, I was honest with them. It's like you either got a problem with your recruitment or your retention or your selection, because there's a problem if you're that far off in what it looks like in your school district, in this particular school. So to be honest with you, they easily let us opt out rather than having a public hearing about it. But I was one of those guys who was ready to have a public hearing about it. And we stumbled up onto Willard, and it was a good fit. And this was my daughter now is in 4th grade. It was in her 1st grade, right after the week after Thanksgiving. And then on that Friday, I had the opportunity to go to there was a coffee with the principal that still exists. And our principal at the time was Dr. Baxter. And my daughter's in a brand new school. She's in first grade. I want to know what that school looks like, less from the outside and more from the inside. So we took a look at, went and had coffee with the principal. There were several parents there. There's a PTA president there. And the coffee was so good, I came back the next month. And that was the first time that I got involved with our school. And then I think of like tangible things. And this is, for this particular school year, as it just kind of progressed and experiences with the PTA, I think it gives the opportunity to kind of shape priorities of the school. Again, have a voice to shape priorities. Absent my voice, I'm not sure what their priorities would be. They could still be the same, but they may not be the same. So it gives me the opportunity to shape priorities. I think about that importantly as like the role as the president. But when I was asked to be the president, I was initially apprehensive and slightly resistant, primarily because of time commitment. And I was like, can I do this? I want to do things well. I don't want to half butt them. I would normally say something different, but I don't want to do them kind of, a little bit. I want to do them well. And I talked to my wife about this and we had a conversation. I'm 47 years old. I have 4 children, the oldest being 29 and 23, then a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. And throughout their entire elementary school and their middle school and their high school for their oldest children and my own, very, very rarely did I see Black teachers. Very, very rarely did I see Black leaders within the school. And the ones that I knew of, I can remember to this day. And again, it has impact on you. So when, I think about those things, like representation matters. And like Kamala Harris, when she was president, became vice president, she said something, sometimes you have to see it to believe it. And you have to believe it to see it. And again, I want to put our young people in a position where they see leaders who look like them because they exist. So again, I was like, great, let me begin to take this on. So when I think about tangible things, the representation, frankly, it's a byproduct. But then secondarily, how do we begin to shape priorities? And like in our school, it's clear, like a priority right now is like, how do we increase testing? And how do we encourage vaccinations for our students? It helps our students and it helps our teachers and it helps our communities and it helps our communities at large. And to be able to shape that priority, to me, is something tangible that we've been able to do. We've had, 3 vaccination clinics at our school with, heavy advocacy to both PUSD and through the public health and the mayor's office. And like, how do we bring vaccinations and meet people where they're at? Because like Jenny said, sometimes there are barriers. And barriers don't always exist or are always visible to a dominant population, but they do exist. And how do we begin to overcome those in significant ways? And then I think like the last piece about it is like, the third question. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to go to the 4th question. I'm good, Susan.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to move right on over to Gargi from San Rafael.
Thank you, Susan. I'm not quite sure how I follow that, Marcus. That was lovely. So I am Gargi Matazeski. Nice to meet all of you. I am the PTA president at San Rafael, and this is my 2nd year as the PTA president there. I have 2 daughters, one at San Rafael and one at Blair in the middle school. I'm also a Penn ambassador to San Rafael, and so I really enjoy talking with prospective families coming into San Rafael or considering San Rafael or really any of our PUSD schools. So let's see, what did you want to hear from me?
What did you first get involved? What
Right.
was the first thing you did where you?
So I first got involved as a room parent. And I really think that's a wonderful first way to get involved. It really allows you to get in at the ground level, really know how the school functions, build communication with kindergarten teachers and other teachers, get to know your parent community, and sort of help be that liaison, support your teachers by communicating and for them and alleviating them of stuff, but also getting to know your parent community, encouraging them to volunteer and really building that community. So that's how I got involved as a room parent. And then this is my 2nd year as PTA president. In terms of tangible ways I see us making a difference, I really think PTA is about community building. And from everything everyone's saying tonight, one of the thoughts that pops into my head is this idea of defining who we want to be as a community. And so as a PTA, we can certainly have events and do that kind of stuff, but defining who we want to be as a community, what's important to us, what we want to make sure we do, how we plan events, how we fundraise, And so that's a really, especially through COVID, we've done a fair bit of relating back to Jenny's point about the room where it happens, right? Who are the families that need us the most right now? Who are the families that need our support? How can we go out there and support those families and re-engage our entire community? So I'll keep it brief. I know we'll talk about more of this in a little bit. Thanks, Susan.
Okay, thank you, Gargi. Nia, let's
actually, I wanted to interrupt.
Oh, no.
Sorry, Susan.
Sure,
But
go ahead.
David, I believe, has to leave very shortly. So maybe we can
Okay.
jump to him
Sure.
and then we'll come back. I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay. We're flexible. Nothing if not flexible. Dr. David Rennie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and the group
Yes.
you're representing?
Absolutely. So hello. I recognize a lot of faces on here. If you are seeing me for the first time, my name is David Rennie. I work with the State and Federal Programs Department, and I also work with our Family Resource Center. So I intersect with a lot of the parent leadership groups, which is why I recognize a lot of the faces. But tonight I'm actually here because we currently are lacking some parent leadership in one of our organizations called the District Advisory Council, or DAC for short. Those are our acronyms, DAC, D-A-C. And really the DAC, or the District Advisory Council, is a collection of parents that represent our school site councils, and they play a very critical role in helping us at the district level really look at how do we shape our program that's referred to as our Title I program. And Title I is really a source of funds. So we do talk a lot about money that we use to try and equalize the playing field so that things like poverty do not predict academic outcome. That's what we want to see happen. And when we spend money, we always need to come back and say, did it work? And that's really the role of school site councils and DAC. And so we have a unique relationship in that you have to be on a school site council or had to have been on one in the previous school year to be a member of the District Advisory Council. And that's why I'm here. And unfortunately, I have enrolled into an admin credentialing program that is literally meeting right now. So I got double booked inadvertently. I managed to convince them to give me a half hour. But I do have a staff member who was also able to come here so that there would be somebody that could at least collect any questions or interest in. I'm going to type Carla Coleman's name into the chat box here so that everybody will know who they can contact. And she will be my stand-in for the remainder of the meeting. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for giving me that space to share. And I will answer the other question briefly of, I got involved with PUSD as an academic data facilitator and then got put into this role to work with parents. And I have just been learning so much. And I just want to say thank you all for being gracious as I take this learning curve.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, so I think because we just talked about DAC, District Advisory Council, and he mentioned the school site councils, let's go next to Maria to tell us a little bit about her perspective as a member of a school site council.
Hello, everyone. Maria. And what was my first experience of involvement? Well, although I'm serving in the school site council now, my first baby and the first involvement that I did, it was with the English learners. So being part of the English learner ELA group, it took me to school site council, a group that I didn't know exists because I was new to the school. I was a new parent at a school, my daughter in kindergarten. I didn't know, and I didn't know anything about the how the schools work and the committees and all this stuff, right? So the first thing I got involved was the English learners, and I took an interest in it. And that took me as the English learner representative to school site council. And then that's how I started learning about school site council. At first, you're lost. You don't know what's going on. It's a lot of data. It's a lot of things that get covered. And so I just continue to go to the school site councils, and by the third year, I was learning everything, the process, and every year the things that you review. So it's been an experience, and I think that it has helped me learn a lot about the how to get parents involved. I think there's a lack of parent involvement, and I think most of them not getting involved because they don't know what the groups are about. And I think with this group and us getting together and building this partnership is gonna allow more parents to learn about the different groups, and I get to feel more comfortable getting involved in this in the different types of groups that exist at a school.
Maria, if I could just follow up with one question. Since you've been on school site council and so far at both at Washington STEM and now at the Center for Independent Studies, CIS,
Yes.
what's one, if you can think of kind of maybe one example of where you felt like you being in that, on those school site council and your voice being part of those discussions has made a difference?
I think that I'm new to CIS, so it's a different process. It's a different way of the way that the things are run there because of the students coming in and out. So, but when I was in elementary, middle school, I think that the most difference that I feel that I made was working with the principal, the instructional coach, and letting them know what I was hearing from other parents, their needs, and what they were talking about when their students, the needs, the tutoring, they're very low in math, and all these things that a lot of times if we don't voice it as parents, they do review data, but then they prioritize. So they're always gonna make decisions based on what they think is best for the school. But when we as parents come and get involved, then we can give them our perspective and our point of view of what's going on in our homes and what the students are telling parents.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm changing up the order altogether here because now that Maria had mentioned being involved in the English Learner Advisory Committee as her starting point. And so let's go next. Is Begonia here tonight? Do we have Begonia here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Can you tell us a little bit, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the DLAC?
Hello, my name is Begonia Bautista, and I'm the president of DLAC. And I became involved 7 years ago when my daughter started kindergarten and became an English learner student. So I wanted to learn more about it and how can I help my daughter, be better studying and reclassify. So I started going to the meetings and start being part of the committee. What I seen, the difference is that we were able to tell the needs to the staff and to the district, and we also work together to find programs and surveys that will help our students reclassify.
All right, thank you. Let's see. Now that I've gone all out of order, I have to figure out where I am. Let's go to Nia. We were about to jump into you and then we shot away, and let's come back.
That's okay. I'm learning. I'm loving it. I don't have to go. But just so I remember, you want me to talk about the beginning of my experience with Aapc?
So start with who you are, what school, what group, what position, and then what was your first, how did you first get involved as a parent?
Sure. So my name is Nia Bailey. I'm the chair of the District African American Council. I'm the mom to 4. I have 2 that have graduated out of PUSD, and I have 2 now at John Muir High School. And my first experience with Aapc was through another parent on school registration at a school site I was attending with my oldest son. It was, I'm signing up for a bunch of stuff, and she comes up to me and says, "Hey, have you heard about AAPC? And I said, no, it's that acronym thing you guys were mentioning earlier. I was like, what is that? So she told me about it and piqued my interest. And I went to the meeting, and best decision I made. In AAPC, in that room that day, I felt seen and heard. AAPC was at that time and still is an affinity group for me, where I can really just be my authentic self and talk about experiences that are pertinent to Black students and parents of Black students, and have all that conversation with people who really relate to what I'm talking about. And it's a solution-oriented group, which I'm really excited to be a part of. And I would say that it's been tremendously impactful for me. In that space, it's really about solving issues and celebrating each other. And it's about the benefit of all students, not just our own students in the group. I think Jennifer touched on that very well. Personally, I'm not a believer that you have to be in a special room to receive a service. You were born entitled to all the benefits and all the possibilities, and you don't have to do anything to earn that. And if there's resources that need to be given to you, we want to be a part of bringing those resources forward. So our advocacy is specific in an area where it's needed. But our overall goal is that when you serve Black students in this way, that it ultimately benefits the entire district and all the children within the district. I don't know if there's a second part of a question.
That was great. I have nothing. And I want to just point out that for a lot of these groups, particularly at the district level, even if you're not a voting member of a group, or you're not, officially part of that group decision making, these are groups that the meetings are typically open, yes, to everyone in the community. And I must say that for myself, I have learned so much at the DAC meetings, at the AAPC meetings, at the Foster Youth Council meetings, and so on. So that's, and I feel like we have grown stronger in this year of Zoom. One way we've grown stronger is because it's fairly easy to access, if it's easy at all. If you can do Zoom, then it's easy to actually check out a lot of different groups and make a lot of connections. And that's been just fantastic, I think, for everybody.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All
Yes,
right.
everyone is welcome.
Thank you. Let's see. Let's go to Warren.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, my name's Warren Skidmore, and at the moment, I'm the interim chairperson of the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education. And I have 2 kids at Muir at the moment. I'm wearing the appropriate gear. And, I say, the question is asking, what was, my first experiences with parental involvement. And a lot of you on this call might know me through science nights and things like that. And, back in the dark ages, well, not that dark, because I'm talking about the lifetime of my oldest daughter. So, say 13 years ago, something like that, when we started understanding that we had a child with special needs. I was going to schools with her, but I was also, I was starting to give talks about astronomy. That's what I do, and the extinction of the dinosaurs, erosion, and all this kind of stuff to support whatever the teachers were doing, because the teachers were supporting my kid. So I got involved, as a volunteer at the schools through my passion for science. But in terms of the CAC, when I was thrown into this position of being the parent of a child with special needs, there's no handbook written for that. So you're looking around for information, support, advice, that kind of thing. And the CAC was one of those organizations that was able to provide me with guidance and support very specifically for my child's education. And it was very useful being involved in the CAC as a spectator, as it were. You know, the CAC really has three roles. You know, one is oversight, a sort of legal oversight almost of you know, various aspects of the provision of services for special education, communication bridge between parents, the community, and people in the school district. You know, the two-way communication there, and supporting the community generally. You know, it's normally parents that are advocating for their kids and need answers. So that's where the bulk of the support goes. And you know, I just got involved, and I ended up on the executive committee doing some of the communication work and things like that. And you know, one thing led to another, and at the moment, possibly, you know, partially due to COVID and things like that, we're, like David talked about earlier, we're in a situation where we need, the CAC needs parent leaders to come and build up the ability to fulfill all these roles that we have to do. You know, these oversight roles, you know, looking at plans that are being submitted to the California Department of Education, that sort of thing, doing all this communication with the district leadership and the special education department and the community, and we're short-handed. We can't do it all at the moment, and it's frustrating. You know, we're limping along. We're having monthly meetings and things like that, but we certainly are falling well short of being able to fulfill the true, you know, the full roles of what the CAC is supposed to do. But you know what, you know, the importance of the CAC is you know, oversight of the services that are provided, making a difference, you know, highlighting problems, communicating those problems, helping people search for solutions. Either, you know, a frustrated parent that isn't, you know, whose kid isn't being serviced properly, and they need to get that sorted, or ways that the school district can improve some aspect of its provision of services. You know, the way the CAC helps is to sort of improve the experiences of lots of people by assisting with the communications.
And that sounds like something that is, you know, a problem for a lot of groups. There's a lot to be done, and it's a big lift for any one person or any two people. And so the more the merrier. The more we can build up these groups, the more voices are heard, and then also the more we can communicate and connect with each other, and provide those other roles that you spoke of.
Yeah. I'm done, Susan. So
okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to Lily Bartenstein and Theresa Reed, who are going to talk about the Foster Youth Guardians, Parents, and Advocates Council. So if you want to, would you want to start, Lily, and we'll go to Theresa?
We're gonna do it the other way around.
Okay. Teresa,
and then she'll tag me in.
All right.
So and Susan, to your point, we're talking about a mouthful. We have condensed that to Foster Youth Council, because that was a lot to put. While we were trying to be inclusive of all groups when it started, functionality in the district, like, okay, we don't have that much space, you know, that many character allowance. So we condensed it to Foster Youth Council so people could relate to a little bit more. So that has been a change. But my name is Theresa Reed, and I am actually a product of PUSD. And I'm not a current parent because my children are now parents. However, I work with Pasadena City College and work with the foster parents, and my responsibility is to provide training and resources. And so that's how I got connected. And Nia, and I just want to thank you and publicly thank the African American Parent Council, because I actually attended a meeting years ago as we were trying to form the council, and using and the African American Parent Council was so instrumental in sharing bylaws and just kind of helping us get this off the ground, because no one that was starting, we weren't parents of PUSD, but working with foster parents and wanted to get that started so that foster parents could have an avenue and get connected with the district. And so just listening to all of you all has been super helpful. So as a parent, I wish I had been more involved in school when my children were in school. And they were children in PUSD, but I just wanted to kind of share that. But I'm going to have Lily really share as a current parent and address the questions. And I'm here more backup support because Lily was just elected in as co-chair on last Thursday. And so I was like, oh, let me not just send her into the lion's den just in case questions come up in terms of familiarity or any historics. But I really am grateful for this forum and seeing the kinds of changes. And then, but yeah, I'll let Lily answer. And then if there's anything that you need me to fill in the gaps, Lily, I got you.
Thank you so much, Theresa. So I am a parent as of 6 months ago, and I have a 9th grader at PHS. That is my current kiddo. And I actually became a parent because I wanted to help fill the need that students have for an adult who cares about them. I'm also a teacher at the high school level. And so I really wanted to support the older youth in foster care and also transition age youth, kids who are aging out. So that is why I became a parent. And then as part of that, when you jump in the middle, the way that a foster parent does, there is an awful lot to figure out very, very quickly. And it's not only within the system of foster care, which is complex, but also you're jumping into a school system with a kid who may or may not have already been in this school system. And Ms. Theresa's trainings were instrumentally helpful to me. And I still was missing a lot of information. And so my participation in the Foster Youth Council has really been about helping centralize information that we need and finding ways to connect parents, not only in our district, but across LA County with information about how to support the education of youth in their care. And I think that there's also a lot that we are able to do as a parent of a kid in this situation. I'm able to also help the district understand the possible needs of kids who may not have a parent right now to advocate for them, kids who may be in a group home placement, who may just not have someone who's paying attention. And that was something that is really important to me and exciting to me about participating as a parent leader. And that's actually something that I know Theresa and I sent to Scott. One of the things that we need are parent advocates who would take on the educational rights of a child who doesn't have someone to help support their education. But yes, did that answer? I think that answered the questions.
Oh, yes, very well. Thank you.
So much.
And then let's go to Natasha Mahone to talk a little bit about the LCAP PAC, and I'll let you unpack that acronym for us, Ms. Natasha.
Well, hello. So glad to be here with you all. This information in this group is just amazing. There's so many rock stars on here, and I love being in a room with parents. So yes, my name is Natasha Mahone. I started my volunteer parent journey back in 2005. It's literally been probably about 16 plus years. I have a son at Muir, he's a sophomore, and then I have a daughter that's at USC as a senior, and so I've been doing this thing for a while. So I am the parliamentarian for the Local Control Accountability Plan Parent Advisory Council, the LCAP PAC. And I've been involved with the PAC for a few years now. And our fearless leaders are Lorena as well as Laura. And so they are leading our group. But I got involved years ago at Willard. So I'm super excited to see Marcus there at Willard because that's where I got my start. And I got involved because it seemed as though it felt like in the atmosphere, I would just say that, as if Black parents didn't care about the achievement of their students, as if Black parents didn't get involved and they did not participate. And so why not me? So when you pull up and you drop off your kid or you do whatever, you're going to see me, you're going to see my face. Your children are going to see me, they're going to see my face. I'm going to speak to them. I will show up at teacher conferences if I have to, because you're working, right? We do care, but our volunteer may look different. Our volunteer and our participation in our students' education may be reading books at home, maybe, you know, so I think sometimes we have a sense of what volunteer and our participation looks like, and it's not the same for every family. And so just trying to combat the stigma around that was one of my driving forces. So I started in the classroom as a homeroom teacher, not teacher, homeroom parent, doing packets and things like that. And then of course got my start at PTA, and then from PTA school site council, and then from school site council, you know, doing some district stuff. And so I just felt like it was really, really, really important. The LCAP, just really quickly, LCAP PAC, one of the what we do on a district level, so we help write a plan, well, not help write a plan, give recommendations for the local control accountability plan. The plan is written by our school district, but each and every parent distinguished group, whether it's the Aapc, African American Parent Council, whether it's the Foster Youth Council, whether it's CAC and or the PAC, we give recommendations to a person like Dr. Rennie, I don't think who's still here, who puts the plan together. Similar to a school site plan for achievement, the LCAP is the district's plan. And it's the plan on how they plan to spend money. And so what we do at the PAC, we are elected, applications go out and we fill them out and submit them and we're voted in. And so we review the plan. And then from there, we give recommendations back to our superintendent, our school board about that plan and the spending of the plan. And I think I answered all the questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Brilliant, thank you. So we had a whole bunch more questions for discussion and we're almost at 7:30. So I want to come to, I think some people will be able to stay a little longer and some people won't, but I just want to kind of wrap up at least the formal part of our forum with a question that combines a couple of the questions that we had. And this is for anybody to jump in from our panel with a few sentences, and let's try to keep it brief so everybody who wants to can weigh in. The first part of the question is, what overall representation gaps do you see in the PUSD community? And people talked about you have to see yourself there, you have to be represented, you have to be able to feel like you can have a voice. So where you see gaps, what would you say to a parent who maybe was one of those parents that you're not seeing in the rooms and at the tables, to encourage them to get their feet wet and maybe check it out, to learn a little bit more, to feel like they can be a part of this conversation and that you want them to be? What would you say? And anybody want to jump in for a start? I see Theresa's hand there.
Thank you. And so that actually was my experience where we weren't seeing foster parents at one point. And it started because there was a conversation and some of the administrators were like, well, foster parents aren't real parents. I'm like, I'm not sure where that comes from. And so we weren't seeing foster parents represented, consoled about things that were going on with students. And so that's really where this started. And and working with parents, I would see them in the trainings. They're asking me all kinds of questions. Where do I go and why is this happening? So my recommendation was you should be a part of the Foster Youth Council so that you can get information. You can have your voice heard from your perspective to be able to facilitate change. So that's where that is really the mission and the push. And so for us, before the Foster Youth Council, we actually do a training workshop. And it's like, well, then just stay another hour.
All right, yeah, just come and see. And anybody else want to respond to that question? Yeah, go ahead.
I can't tell if Maria and Warren were in front of me or not. I don't want to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's so many
I
hands
can't
here.
tell.
Well, Maria, we'll go to you next.
You go first, dear.
Okay. All right. I was just gonna say that what I do say to parents is they're the best person to represent their story. They're the best person to tell it and to lead from a place of passion where your advocacy is. If that group doesn't exist as an existing group, and I'm using air quotes not to be, not with any ill intent, but how can we support you in that messaging getting out there? And I think there are so many stories to tell, but as we've said before, some people don't feel comfortable in certain spaces, and that should not preclude them from getting their messaging out there and finding others who have similar interests to them. So one thing as parent leaders that we can do is stand alongside them on the entire journey, telling them how they can get their message out there, or what is it that they want to do, or what is it where do they see gaps and things missing in representation, and then support them in that with the process that you have to go through to make that happen, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Maria, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I would tell parents to start small. Get to know your teacher, ask a lot of questions. So that everything starts with your student teacher, and volunteer, read a book, get involved in the classroom. And from there, you can just build more of a relationship with your school community, because now you get to know all your teachers and you get to know your principal. And even if you're not part of these groups, once you have a good relationship with your teachers and your principal, it's so easy just to communicate with them. And if you see something that you need to voice, or these other parents come to you and they're telling you stuff, but they're not part of the group, so they're not never gonna voice their opinions, then you could be that person, that mediator, that what, the parents are telling me this, and you bring it up to attention to the principal or just to the school community. And it's just starting small. You don't have to be the president, you don't have to be the secretary. As long as you are present in your student education and just get involved in what goes on in the school community, I think that's a good starting point.
Great, thank you. Warren, go ahead.
From my perspective, there's not necessarily representation gaps. There's just a broad underrepresented. There's not enough parents involved very broadly. Every organization here, it seems to be saying, come and get involved. So it's a common thing. It's which in one way is good, because it means there's an avenue. Anyone can get involved, because there's always going to be a place for them. And then just building a bit on what Maria was saying, the idea of starting small. By getting involved, it doesn't mean that you have to be the president or whatever of some organization. I guess it's not very exciting, but a lot of the work is very mundane. It's preparing communications and sending them out and liaising with someone and recording phone messages and stuff like that. But it's the scripts and schedules and things. There's just a lot of work to do, but that's a real contribution that you can make. And by doing that, you're going to get, like Maria said, you're going to start to get experience and exposure and build up understanding of the bigger pictures and stuff like that. So, if I was to say to anyone, just take a step and get involved, and you'll probably be amazed at how easy it is to grow into whatever position you step into. Okay, I better stop because we're short of time.
My last question for everybody was, and everybody doesn't have to answer, but if you have a strong response to this, what is one way that you personally feel like you've benefited, and if you want to include your student in that, from your involvement, and you could just say that in a sentence, a short sentence. feel free to leap in.
I see Marcus with his hand up. I don't know if that's
okay.
maybe a legacy hand.
But it's
Go
fine.
for it.
So I mean, I think I can answer both. So first of all, again, like I appreciate Jenny's presentation at the beginning, because I think the last slide said who tells the story, right? And when you think about getting parents involved, again, this isn't figurative in this situation, it's literal. Who tells the story? Your perspective can go unheard. The lens you see things from will go unheard. I appreciate what Natasha said, and I thought it was courageous to say, hey, listen, I felt like Black parents weren't involved, and I didn't want to be that Black parent who's perceived as not involved. I think that's courageous. Again, that's, giving perspective, a different perspective, giving a different lens. And I think that's courageous to do that. And then frankly, too many times organizations and PTAs are homogenous, and in our case at Willard, when I came there 3 some odd years ago, it was homogenous, and I shared that with them. And, they were like, what do you mean? I was like, you guys are overwhelmingly white women who don't work. And that's homogenous. We're still there, in terms of in a different way at our PTA. We were talking about it last night. Like we're homogenous, like almost the entire board came from my kindergarten class last year, right? Again, we need to be able to do something to recruit people who you don't know, who don't look like you, who are different in some way or another. And then the other thing in terms of recruitment is frankly, it's an example, for your kids, we should volunteer. Volunteer should be part of life. Again, it helps and develop a community. And when I think about the benefit of being, and the question, Susan just asked, the benefit of participating in the PTA, again, is that example that it sets of volunteerism, for my own kids. I want to do something to volunteer to shape a culture, shape priorities, and what this school can overall look like. And by the way, when you get a little bit older, and right now, you can still do some of those things as well. It is setting the absolute right example. Not to mention, you get to understand, different perspectives from parents, different perspectives from many, many students, and different perspectives from many teachers. And I think, like Nia said earlier, was when there's problems to be, solution oriented. And then the last thing I'll say is that, a byproduct of meeting all of these parents is you get a lot more people who are ready to go to a happy hour. So I'll stop there.
I mean, I think one thing that just jumps out at me is that I feel like I touched on this when I said you can go to other people's meetings. And sometimes there are so many different groups that people kind of feel like they have to pick one, what's my silo, what's my space going to be? And it may be that there's one group that you really have a passion for, you really feel like you get joy from being with that group of parents, and that's fantastic. But I really feel like our best hope as a district is, and as a community, is that we start seeing each other, and that you're not just a special education parent. You could also be part of PTA. If just because it says Parent Teacher Association doesn't mean that you as a caregiver, maybe your grandma or auntie or a foster youth guardian, that that we don't box ourselves into these different categories. And so I feel like that's perhaps our greatest opportunity. I don't really have anything to add. If anybody feels like they had something that they wanted to round things out with, I'll just throw it open for a few minutes, or questions if anybody has questions.
So Suzanne, I was just going to echo with regards to the benefit. I think one of the benefits that I've been able to take away is that I've had other folks advocate with me. So I don't feel like I'm doing this by myself, but I have other people advocating with me. So if I was at a school site, similar to what was said earlier, Jennifer, I showed up to ELAC meetings and they translated for me. And they showed up to AAPC meetings and we translated for them. And so even now at a district level, I am not in this by myself. I have others that I can pull on, that I can call, that I can get resources from. And that's what's benefited me. And then lastly, My kids volunteer now. My daughter volunteers. Why? Because she sees me. And folks would say, they don't want to see you on a high school campus. My kids don't have a problem seeing me. Now, I'm not in their class, but hey, I'm volunteering. I'm going to, coffee with the principals or whatever, whatever the case may be, I'm doing it. And so my children see me volunteer. And the hope is that the cycle continues, that they will then volunteer and become great citizens, contributing to our community.
Thank you.
I just want to say right now that I want to acknowledge Natasha because Natasha is part of the AAPC leadership team. She's also here, she's here representing Aapc, but she is a mentor to me and to so many other people. And actually, Theresa, she's the one who sent all that stuff to you in the past. So she's an amazing person. I'm just mentioning that because what she shared, it's really true, but as we talk about how you get parents engaged, she's one of the parents who does that. I received that love from another parent that I mentioned at the first school, and then in the district Aapc, Natasha was there as a mentor for me in that way. So I think with all of us as parent leaders, that's part of what we do is go out and spread the message of how this is doable. I have 4 kids, I am married, but it's a busy life. And I also claim my geriatric dog as something that I have to care for. But you can find ways to do it. I like what Maria said about starting small. It doesn't have to be grandiose. But as Natasha mentioned that her children volunteer, I volunteer because I come from a line of volunteers and people that always say, my mom used to always say, we've been talking about telling your own story. She says, nobody can tell your experience better than you can. And that was her push to me. Write about that, talk about that, speak from an authentic place and speak from your heart. And when we do that, we can encourage our families on the site level. And then that builds up from there. And I'm very excited. Everyone in this space, and some I haven't gotten to really know, but has been helpful to me. Come to our meetings, and I've got a chance to go to your meetings. Marcus, I've got to come to Willard to one of your meetings because I'm interested in this whole happy hour thing. So I just want to bring that up.
They have a happy hour budget over there.
That's going to make a difference for me. And I'm part of the PTA. And Scott, thank you so much for organizing this, for making this happen. I've gained so much from you, and I'm just really appreciative of this. And I don't want to do a shout out all around the room, but all of you are amazing, and thank you so much.
You really all have wonderful hearts. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for being here.
All right. And I haven't mentioned my organization, but I have had it up in my background. So Pasadena Education Network Penn is partly about helping prospective families find a home in PUSD, but also, very much about helping people plug in once you're here. And so if there's any way that we can support what you're doing at your school site with your team, with just getting the information, communicating the information about the different parent groups is something we're trying to do more of and do better. And maybe, eventually kind of having parent mentor teams, as Nia has mentioned at a couple of occasions, at each school site where, you have a little collection of parents who have been there and know the ropes and can kind of be there to welcome with warm hands and help people get connected once they come to the school. So lots of good ideas, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much, and all the panelists. And you have a great evening, and we'll publish all of this and the recording, and make sure that more folks hear what you've had to say tonight.